just got done with a great episode of Tailgate Trash Talk. We transitioned over to Rosinbaggers. Love it. I'm here. Let's talk baseball, baby.
Let's talk baseball. So let's jump right into it. Review our series from last week. And you were looking at the. Oh, sorry. I screwed that up. Yeah. We were looking at the same series, Cards Braves. And I think if Ty were here, he probably would have been thinking the same thing. Yeah. I like that you highlighted Kelly.
I know you would appreciate my highlight. Yep.
Yeah. Talk to me about this series, man.
So it was a series that I predicted Atlanta to just roll them Cardinals, I'll eat my hat, so to speak, like you've done in past couple weeks episodes. So I will eat my hat on this one. But if it wasn't for Kenley Jensen, I would not be having to do this.
Yep.
And it pains me because the Braves were in it. They won the first game of the series. Second game, man, they were right there. They were up. Kenley Jansen, bases loaded, walks in the winning run. And then, kind of turns the momentum for the next game, for Sunday night's ball game. And you mentioned it, too, in our group messaging. How the fuck does Kenley Jensen have a job still? I don't get it. The dude has X amount of blown saves in the past couple years. I just don't get it. I don't see what his worth is anymore. The Braves need to get rid of him. If they want to make the playoffs, and this is a serious note here to the Braves organization. If you want to make the playoffs, don't worry about winning the division. It's about making the playoffs. If you want to make the playoffs and go deep into the playoffs, but in order to go deep into the playoffs, you have to make the playoffs. Get Kenley Jansen out of there. Get him out of there.
Yeah, for sure. I posted it on Facebook too about the same thing I said to you and Ty in the group chat. How's he still a closer in the league? And it was almost unanimous. And it's funny because I posted it, I think it was 12 minutes before the end of that inning. I posted it when he had the first batter of the inning and he walked that batter. And I've given Kenley a lot of grief over the last couple of years, and it sort of just culminated in this. He essentially walks the bases loaded, and then walks in the winning run.
Yeah.
And I get the pedigree. There was a time that Kenley Jansen was a really, really good closer for the Dodgers, but it's been 5 years, I think, since really that's been the case.
Yeah.
And it always seems like it's a goddamn circus show with the fucking guy. He'll finish the season with 30, 40 saves, but he'll also have some of the worst blown saves, the worst crunch time blown saves. He did it for the Dodgers a couple of times in the playoffs. You mentioned the playoffs. The Braves, I know, were a little bit worried with Will Smith and how contentious sometimes or tense his innings could be at the ends of games, but they're not getting an upgrade with Kenley Jansen.
No.
This guy he's a nightmare to watch as a fan. He's a nightmare to think about coming into the game for you.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it. If the Braves are going to go deep, they've got to either hope that he gets better in the playoffs, which I don't think is going to happen, or two, find another option that they're going to be able to lean on. I understand that finding a closer is tough. It's not easy to just get a guy that can come in and shut down the ninth inning. It's a skill. It's a mindset that takes a lot of different approach from pitchers, but Kenley Jansen is not the answer. It's unbelievable that he's still a damn closer in this league, for me anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it almost brings you back to wanting John Smoltz to come out of retirement or Rocker Rocker coming out of the bullpen with his
Sprinting
beard
out of the bullpen.
and his, like, like, man, it's, that's, and I think it was Saturday's. No, it was Sunday's game. It was Sunday's game, Sunday night's game. I wish Ty was here because he would know the pitcher's name. But the pitcher who they brought in, I think in the 7th, 8th inning, to pitch against the Braves.
Oh yeah.
Holy cow! That dude has some shed.
Yeah, he's hitting triple digits almost every pitch.
Every single with control too. With control.
That's a good point you make there, because what do you think about when you think of a good closer? They're a strikeout pitcher.
Yeah.
Kenley Jansen's not a strikeout pitcher. He's a cutter guy. He's got to be so precise, and that's how he gets himself in these predicaments, because he's got to be so precise on the corners to be able to get guys out, and he's not that guy often. And you look at his K to walk ratio, it's like 4 right now. A closer, that's unheard of for a closer. Yeah. Like closers usually are up in the 8, 9 range of Ks to walks. Some of the best are in double digits potentially, but it's just he's not the answer. They're going to have to score a lot of runs and win games comfortably, and I don't think that's a good recipe for the playoffs. If I'm Atlanta, I'm looking at right now, what are my options potentially to replace Kenley Jansen if I really have to, if I get in a pinch?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so speaking of the Braves here, the Braves were trailing the Mets. Mets are beating the Dodgers right now 2-1 in the top half of the 8th here. Tomorrow is September baseball, baby.
Yeah, buddy.
September baseball.
We're really in crunch.
Yes, sir. So Braves need to figure it out as far as the closer role, and they need to figure out sooner rather than later, because if you wait till the latter part of it, it's going to cost you. And it's either going to cost you the division or that wild card spot.
Yeah, for sure. They've got to figure out the bullpen. I think they'll still win enough games to get in on a wild card spot, but it's going to be tough in the playoffs to look down the bench or look into the bullpen and think, oh, I'm bringing Kenley Jansen in. Let's see if this goes smooth, or let's see if the circus music start playing.
And as a fan, as a teammate, or as a head coach, and those thoughts are running through your mind, like if those thoughts are running through your mind, especially as a head coach, you need to make a change.
That's a tough way to make a living.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of this series, I want to talk a little bit about what Albert Pujols is doing right now.
What's he doing?
Yeah.
What's he doing?
Chasing 700.
Okay, chasing. My bad. He's not going to get there. He's not going to get there. Okay, but, the dude's like 45 years old.
Yeah, he is. Absolutely. They said during the series, though, I found something interesting. And the hitting coach, I forget the hitting coach's name for the Cardinals, but they had said that a couple of weeks ago, about 5 weeks ago or so, Albert came to him right before the home run derby even, came to him and said, I think I figured something out in the cage, and took it to the field. And he's been hitting the cover off the ball quite a bit here over the last, month-ish. And the chase for 700 is on. I know that you have said he's not going to get there. What if he finishes the season at 699? Is he going to come back next year?
No, I told you that last week. No.
So,
and here's the thing. I think Pujols is one of those guys that, he's already came out and said he's not returning next year. Okay. I don't think he's going to be one of those guys that goes back on his word just for one home run to make it into the 700 home run club.
Right.
And you mentioned that he went to the hitting coach a couple weeks ago before the home run derby and said, I think I figured it out. Okay. So let me put it back to you on this one. Why didn't you figure it out all those years with the Angels?
Yeah, right.
I mean, you left St. Louis for that big lucrative contract and you underperformed. And as everyone knew, that was going to be the case. He was going to underperform, and that's why St. Louis didn't want to pay him. Rightfully so. I wouldn't have paid him. So what are you doing differently now, the second half of the season, that you weren't doing the first part of the season, that you weren't doing the last 3-4 years with the Angels?
Yeah.
And he's a veteran. He knows, his swing, what he needs to do, his mechanics, everything else like that, the timing and everything. So, you hear stories of scouts and everything before he was even drafted, how he was just hitting the cover off the ball, how the bat and the ball sounded differently in the cages, when he was just taking BP and everything else. So now, granted, everyone thought he was a 16-year-old and he was a 22-year-old at the time, but that's here nor there. But at the same time, you've been in the league for 20 years, though, too.
Yeah.
So what's changed? What's changed for you? I would just be interested to hear Albert's perspective on what he changed up that he's doing differently now, and the one thing with baseball and baseball players and hitters and pitchers and whoever, if you play the game of baseball, you know that you are a person of routine. You have your mechanics. If you're a pitcher, you have your mechanics. You have your routine that you go through, the day before you start or the day before you pitch, the day of that you're pitching, and vice versa, whether or not you're a position player and you're a hitter, you go through your same routine over and over again. So it would just be interesting to see from Albert's perspective what that little change was that was like a moment, that is making him hit the cover off the ball the second part of the season. Now, yes, he's still got a month to go to get 6 home runs. Do I think he's going to get it? Nope. Sure not. Still gonna lay on that one. If he does get it, great. Good for him. At the end of the season, he's still retiring.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think I agree with you. I think he's done. He's done. He's come to terms with it. I think he'll be a coach, to be honest, but I do think he's done at the end of this season and won't be going back on his word on it. So good. All right, let's talk about the upcoming week here. So you're looking at Jays, Yanks.
Yeah, buddy.
This is suddenly a series that could make a difference in the standings.
So I went with this series for two reasons, okay? One, because it's the Jays Yankees and it's September. There's playoff implications. And two, partly because of your State of the Union. So I was like, what better series to preview than this one? And we talked on the Yankees last week. We talked on the Blue Jays last week on this. Now they're playing each other. And it's going back to – it's almost going back to fundamentals here. Fundamentals in the middle of the season? Oh. If you didn't get the quote, it's from Angels in the Outfield. Yep. But everyone was talking about the Yankees, their lineup, how many games they're going to win. They're going to break that 116 win season total, everything else like that. I was first to say, no, they're not. You cannot sustain like that. And I think, and I mentioned it last week, I think everyone thought, and I think maybe even the Yankees thought this as well. Love you too, Lace. Uh, that the Yankees in their lineup was like Murderers Row times 2 here. And that the Yankees were going to be scoring all these runs, and they haven't. Their pitching has been keeping them into those close games, and they're only scoring 3-4 runs a game. They're not scoring the 6, 7, 8 runs a game that I think everyone thought they were going to be scoring throughout the season. And now their pitching has went downhill a little bit. Their hitting's gone downhill. Okay. And so now at the All-Star break, you had the Yankees at, almost a 20-game lead, 16, 20-game lead. Now they're up to 6.5, I think, something like that in the division. And that's just because of the month of August. The month of August, the Yankees have been terrible. They've been brutal. Whatever name in the book you want to throw at them, that's the Yankees. So
they've been pretty awful.
They've been awful. Awful. Now let's talk about the Blue Jays. My World Series champion that I picked at the beginning of the season. They have underperformed. I think they've underperformed to a lot of people's expectations for this year. And they've been kind of flying under the radar, so to speak. And here's one thing, too, that I think why they've been flying under the radar. They haven't been as good as they were last year, both offensively and defensively. But 2, they're not on TV a lot. Unless you get the MLB package, you're not watching the Blue Jays day in and day out like you are some of these other teams. And so I think, by them flying under the radar, they're kind of creeping up here towards the end of the season. They kind of stayed middle of the pack. And that can be a good thing or a bad thing. You can't take them lightly. If you're the Yankees, obviously you're not taking anybody lightly at this point. You have to get it out of your own mind that you guys can play baseball and win games and everything else like that. They've been beating themselves. If they can do that, the Braves should get 2 out of 3, if not sweep the series here. But if the little unknown birdie flies under the radar here, they could take 2, if not sweep the Yankees. And that's the start of September. And we've been talking about it for a couple weeks now. September is playoff baseball. You cannot lose a series in September if you're needing to make the playoffs.
Yep. This is where games really start to mean a whole lot more. These series right here with the first place Yankees and the third place Jays, who are only a game behind the Rays. They're 8 out of the division right now, but if they go sweep this gets tight.
Absolutely.
The pressure factor becomes real for the Yankees, and they have not been playing good baseball. I don't know, for me, I don't have confidence that they're going to be able to just switch it on in September. You mentioned they were living on the edge a lot with clutch hitting and winning games late, and the pitching was keeping them in it, and they were finding ways to get a walk-off hit here. And I think Aaron Judge has got to be getting close to having, the single-season record for walk-off hits, because it just seemed like every night for the month of April, May, and part of June, he just was walking the game off. And they've really tanked. Stanton's gone down, but I think the pitching has really been the biggest difference. They're not scoring, like you said, the 6, 7, 8, 9 runs a game that we expected to see from them maybe at the beginning of the season. So 100%, this is a big series, a series we probably wouldn't have expected to be a big series, a month ago before the collapse in August. I think we probably would have looked at this and said the Jays are going to be fighting for their wild card lives, but this won't have a lot of play in the division, but it does. It does now.
Absolutely. So, and you hit it on the head there. Yeah. A month ago? Yeah, absolutely. the Jays are fighting for their wild card position here. Now, not so much.
Yeah, Dad, to circle back on that, I don't know. It's not easy to just grab a guy and say, you're our closer now. So I think that's probably why they're sticking and they're going to stick with Kenley. And they're just going to hope that he kind of figures it out by playoff time and doesn't cost them, games in a short series here, especially if they're in the wild card. It's one and done. You can't have a guy come in the game late, blow it because you don't have the next night to make it up. I assume they've got guys that have, they've got some fireball, flamethrowers there. Matzik, I think, is a guy that I fully expected them to potentially be grooming him to take over as the closer, but he reminds me a bit of he pitched for the Indians, and now I'm forgetting his last name. First name was Andrew. I think it was Bailey, but Andrew, the old reliever, big lefty, and he was a setup man, never closed, was a setup man for them, but he was the best setup man in the business. So I think that's how they view Tyler Matzik a little bit. So maybe that's just what it is, and they don't have a guy, and they're going to ride with Kenley. I worry for the Braves that if they're relying on Kenley in the playoffs, it could bite them. Now, he's got experience in the playoffs, and maybe you just hope that he's going to be able to buckle down and get through these playoff games. But it's tough in October, and you need your bullpen on its A game, because we've seen in the past bullpens can win you a series and they can lose you a series pretty quickly.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I'm looking ahead here.
I like your matchup. I like your matchup, but I wish, and it goes back to your matchup from earlier after the trade deadline.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's still a Tatis-less series.
Yep.
The Padres have been playing better baseball over the last 10 days than they were immediately after the trade deadline. It seemed weird that they made these big trades and they picked up a few guys and then suddenly they couldn't win games. And you had the news with Tatis, and he's not going to be back at all this year and part of next year because of the suspension. And then once the suspension gets announced, he says, I'm going to have my shoulder surgery. It's the same shoulder that was an issue last year. But, this is a guy you can't rely on. For me, this is a series. I picked this one because it's September baseball. And if the Padres are going to be serious about contending in the NL, because the West is done for them, there's no way the Dodgers collapse like the Yankees did. The West is done for the Padres, so they've got to start tuning up for a playoff run, winning that wild card game or games, getting into a series against the division winner, and then seizing some momentum here as we close out September so that they can be a threat in the playoffs. Because if they're the team that played for about 2 weeks after the trade deadline, they're dead in the water. But if they can right the ship here a little bit, maybe take 2 of 3 here from the Dodgers, maybe start to build some momentum toward the end of September into October, it's a team that has talent. They've got depth, they've got pitching, they've got hitting, they've got guys all over the field. They can win games. They've just got to put it all together. And, that's what I'm looking at here in this series. Dodgers, Padres. Dodgers are obviously playing great baseball. We expect it from them. Are the Padres going to be a serious contender or not? And I think this series here is going to go a long way to telling us whether or not September is going to be a month that they can really seize something going in, or are they still going to be looking for answers as we get closer to the playoffs?
Yeah, and it's you're looking at obviously the Dodgers' best record in baseball right now, but towards the end of this month, they've lost a few games that they probably shouldn't have lost. They're down right now 2-1 with 1 out in the top of the ninth to the NL East leading Mets. So, I mean, obviously, a good matchup between these two teams, but it also going to the Dodgers here, They also placed another pitcher on the IL. I can't remember how many days. Yeah. And we've mentioned, I think you've mentioned that before on here, how many players the Dodgers have on or have had on the IL during the season, and especially at one time, and they're still winning ball games. You know, they still have the best record in baseball right now. And so it'll be interesting to see when the Dodgers clinch the division, what Dave Roberts does with his players. Does he sit them? And that's every manager does it towards the end of the season after they clinch or whatnot. But it's just interesting, especially nowadays with pitch counts, innings pitched throughout the season. You know, you have these players that are, on restricted lists and everything. And typically that's for guys that are coming off of, Tommy John or something like that. But some of these guys have been playing hurt and everything else. And so it'll just be interesting to see how the Dodgers can kind of maintain throughout the course of September. Do they lose steam? Do they keep, are they staying above that 50%, that above 500 ball for the month of September? And then you look at the Padres. We mentioned it a few weeks ago, and there's the Dodgers. They just lost to the Mets 2-1. It's another Tatis-less series here, and I think everyone would agree that if he was playing, this would be a more than highlighted series than it already is. Yes, there's playoff implications here for San Diego for sure. And just how will they perform against the Dodgers? And like I just mentioned, Dodgers, they just lost this one. They've lost some games towards the end of the stretch of August here that they should not have lost. So it'll just be interesting to see, what teams come out and play this weekend in the series. So it could be a great opportunity for San Diego to kind of take the series away from San Diego or from the Dodgers here. Who knows?
Yeah, if the Dodgers are letting their foot off the gas, I think that's an opportunity for San Diego to kind of assert itself in the wild card standings as well. But also those sorts of things can really swing the momentum for a team too. You get a few wins, no matter what Dodgers team you get, whether they take their foot off the gas or not. Getting a couple of wins in a series against them can be a real boon for the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with you on that.
All right, let's take a little interlude here and do our salute to service. Then we'll get to our State of the Union. This episode goes out to Army Sergeant Christopher Wesley Curry. Curry was 23 at the time of his passing from Terre Haute, Indiana. Died May 4th, 2020 in Erbil, Iraq. He was part of the 3rd Battalion, 21st Infantry Regiment, 1st Stryker Brigade Combat Team, 25th Infantry Division. Army Sergeant Christopher Wesley Curry, we have the watch. All right.
I love how you're outside doing the podcast in the elements. I just love it. That time of year, September.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah. This is baseball weather too, for
Absolutely. Sure. What'd you say the temperature is up there?
It's about 70 right now. It's so perfect, dude. Barely a little touch of a light breeze.
Nice.
I love it.
Nice.
All right, let's do our State of the Union. That always just feels so right after the salute. Nice little transition.
It does. Yes, sir.
All right. So you mentioned it earlier, a little bit of an allusion to my State of the Union. So I'm looking at the AL East standings, and of course, the standings, the snip that we have here is from yesterday, so it does not include the conclusions of last night's games. However, the Yankees have gone from 16, 17, 18 games up in their division, looking like they're cruising to a division title, cruising to the number one seed in the AL, to suddenly, as Stove mentioned moments ago, this series this weekend against the Blue Jays means something now. Because if the Yankees go and lay an egg against the Jays here, and the Jays take 2 of 3 or they take 3 of 3 from the Yankees, those standings start to crunch down ever so slightly, and that pressure starts to ramp up. And we've seen teams in the past fold under that pressure in September. The Mets, the Red Sox with their beer and chicken collapse, and some of these other teams we've seen collapse in September. It gets tight, and it's hard to flip that switch back on once you've flipped it off for so long. And for the Yankees, if I'm a Yankees fan, I worry desperately that they flip the switch off for August, and it's going to be really, really hard to throw that breaker again and get this thing rolling when the calendar turns over at midnight tonight, turns over to September, and we start to play games that mean a bit more. We start to play games that feel like playoff baseball, and the Yankees are not playing very good baseball right now. So what are your thoughts here on the Yanks, man?
Dude, I mentioned it last week. I mentioned it again tonight. They got to start putting together some wins. They got to get that winning streak going. Just throwing a couple wins here and there, not going to get the job done. Not in the division that you're in. So, at the end of the day, I said it last week, I do think the Yankees will right the ship here. And I think that they will win the division. But it might be one of those things that, and we've seen this with teams towards the end stretch here, to where they start using their pitching longer. Their guys aren't getting the rest that they should have gotten. And it's going to affect them in the playoffs. They'll still make the playoffs, but I don't think your guys are going to be, quote unquote, rested.
Yeah.
They could have been had you not had your abysmal August record.
Yeah. No, I agree with you completely, too. If they get desperate down the stretch here trying to hold on to a division and start to use especially that bullpen that's already depleted, that's already fairly inferior. They got exposed against Houston before the All-Star break and haven't recovered in that bullpen. You don't know if Chapman's going to play. He's got that infection from a tattoo. And he wasn't –
Dude, that was going to be one of my State of the Unions, and it was going to be the Yankees right there and the tattoo. Like, you guys are on a losing streak. Like, you guys have had a shitty month of August, and your closer goes and gets a tattoo, gets infected, and now can't pitch.
What kind of seedy fucking tattoo joint is a professional baseball player going to? Oh, it's just great. But isn't that just the Yankees August? Like,
that's the Yankees August to a T right there.
Yeah.
To a T.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I mentioned that might have been one of my State of the Unions, and I didn't put anything on there, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this. And I don't know if it's a State of the Union. I think it should be. But we've talked at large about the A's organization all season long, okay? And two things here, okay? Two things. I'll leave you with two things, and I know you're going to come back with something strong. So I'm waiting. I'm waiting to hear the Gary explanation here, okay? Number one, the A's AAA attendance record is better than your major league attendance record. There's one. Okay. Two, there's a pitcher from Cuba that is going to go into the international draft, or I can't remember the correct terminology for it. Guess who's at the top? Guess who's at the top of the list of teams that has the most to spend on international signings? The Oakland A's.
Yep.
And they are the front runners to sign him. So to me, it's, as a fan of baseball looking in on these aspects of the game and of the sport and of the business side of things, I'm looking at it, I'm like, you're going to spend this much money on an international signee, but then 4 or 5 years from now, we're just going to trade him away. We're not really going to get anything for him. It just, man, instead of the Angels owner selling his team, why can't the fucking A's owner sell the fucking team?
Yeah, I mean this whole situation with Oakland is just, it's such a pockmark for the league, and the Cincy ownership and what he said to start the season too. That's just, I can't believe that the league hasn't stepped in and told these guys, like, we've got to do something about this. I assume it's because the other owners are just, hey, we're all just making money and printing money here. But, you know, you mentioned the AAA team having a better attendance record than their major league team. Well, you know what's different about their AAA team and their major league team? They're winning games. They're playing about 500 baseball. They've been a good team in that AAA league the last handful of years. And it's, of course, the A's have a good minor league system because they just fucking sell everybody and get prospect after prospect after prospect. But put a good product on the field, the fans will come out. The fans will come and watch the game. There's one exception in this league, and they're the only team that I would give a pass on spending money and actually doing something with their team, and that's Tampa, because it's in a fucking retirement home city. But look what they've done. They've found ways to maximize and sign key guys and make frugal trades, not just trade everybody. Yeah. So take a lesson from that. If anybody's got room to complain about a market, it's Tampa, not Oakland, which is like the fucking 10th or something biggest market in baseball. It might even be a little higher than that. It's unbelievable to me. I'm with you, right? Instead of Artie Moreno selling there in LA, let's force the Moors to sell Oakland, because it's nonsense, and nothing's going to change if they move to Vegas. Nothing is going to change because it's him. It's what he is. It's what he does. That they're going to go to Vegas. They're going to make a bunch of money off the city to build a stadium. They're going to make a bunch of money off season ticket sales probably early on, and then they're going to put a shit product on the field, and nobody's going to come to the games, and then he's going to cry, woe is me, Vegas is not a good baseball market. No, motherfucker. You're not good for baseball. So you should not be owning, you should not be in charge of a major league franchise. And that's my stance on it. Put a good product on the field, the fans will come watch.
Here's my other thing with that too. And I'm going to assume, and we all know what happens with assuming, but I'm going to assume here that big if, the A's get relocated to Vegas, they better put a fucking dome, retractable roof over that stadium. Because if you're playing a 3 o'clock game, even a fucking 7 o'clock game in Vegas right now,
you're gonna cook.
Who the fuck's going?
Yeah. Nope.
It doesn't matter.
You're gonna fucking cook.
You're gonna cook.
Yeah. Nope.
It baffles me that, the A's have, and we saw it at the start of the season. They had the pitching. They had some key players. and they just traded him. They just traded him. And to me, they didn't get anything in return. Nothing.
Nope.
And just, I'm in the same boat as you. I wish MLB or the owners would do something about that, because it's putting a black eye not just on the sport, but on the franchise as well. And so when you look at, and so with saying that, if I'm a investor and I'm looking at teams to buy, am I going to buy the Oakland A's? Probably not. Want to know why? Because I'm going to have to put X amount of money into just buying the team, but then I'm going to have to put an exponential amount of money into just marketing the team again,
like rebuilding the reputation.
It's almost rebranding the reputation.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, for sure. It's nonsense out there, man. It's nonsense.
And it's almost like you're going to have to go to a different, not genre, but different fan base.
Yeah.
You're to reach different
demographic.
Yes. Because I think the ones that were A's fans are not going to believe the line of BS that you feed them until there's actually something that is put out there and that is sustainable.
Yeah.
For a few years.
Absolutely.
Then I think you will get that fan base back, but it's going to take a few years and a lot of money.
Yep. Yeah, a new owner is going to be strapped pretty bad there because they really have sullied the reputation of the team. They've sullied their relationship with the city. It would be a struggle for a new ownership group to come in there, but God, I can't stand sitting back here and watching what the fuck they're doing with the A's.
Yeah.
It's nonsense. Oh, all right. Let's get to closing comments here. What you got for me, Stove? What do you want to close on here tonight?
Jansen's closing right now.
Oh, I hear the circus music in the background.
He just walked the guy.
Of course he did.
2 outs, too.
Fucking dead. Oh, good grief.
So
in that game, they're up what, 2?
3-0. 3-0, top 9.
He's got a little to play with here, I guess.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Gee, fucking Jansen, man.
So closing remarks for me. I'm going to go back to the Cardinals Braves series. And I did pick the Braves to sweep the Cardinals just because fuck the Cardinals and Ty. And Ty's not here to defend himself, so fuck Ty too. Miss you, Ty. Oh my God. Jimmy. Get him the fuck out of there. 2-run bomb.
2-run bomb. 3-2. Jesus. Kenley fucking Jansen, man.
Oh man. But okay, so going back to the Braves Cardinals series. That series was playoff baseball to me. It went down to the wire, except for Friday's game.
Yeah.
It went down to the wire Saturdays and Sundays game. And that's what playoff baseball is about. You're going to see, the pitching matchups and this and that. And man, the atmosphere was just great. Even though it was at Busch Stadium and everything else, the atmosphere, it was playoff baseball. And you can just, even though it's still August, You're moving up. You're moving one day closer to that October baseball. I think it was a great series for the Braves to kind of, even though I'm going to say test themselves, okay? But test themselves. And the reason why I'm saying that is they played the Mets. They took 2 or 3 from the Mets, okay? You have another playoff caliber team in the Cardinals. You lost that series 2-3 or 2-1, okay? You can blame the one loss on your closer, okay? Whatever. You still lost.
Speaking of said closer, he's 3-0 on the next batter.
Yeah, he is. Jesus. To me, I gotta stop looking at this. I'm getting sidetracked here.
Yeah. Falling the fuck apart.
Yes. Yes, he is.
Oh,
there's a strike.
hey, we're gonna get one over.
But you have to have towards that stretch here, and you're going to have stretches like this, but especially in playoff baseball, records are 0-0 when it comes time to playoffs. So when you play the likes of the Mets, who are leading the division by 1.5, 2.5 games or whatnot, and then you play the Cardinals, who are leading the Central Division, who are a playoff caliber team, you're going to be playing those teams in the playoffs. So to me, it's how you respond. Good pick there by Olsen at first in the game. It's how you respond to those games and how you build from those games as well, too, that are going to make you that much more dangerous towards this month of September and moving on into the playoffs. I think if the Braves can build off of the series loss to the Cardinals, and we mentioned it tonight, figure out that closer role, because Jensen is not it. Jensen is not it. If they can figure that out, then I think they will run deep in the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. And just to piggyback a little bit, you mentioned, I know you framed that around the Braves a little bit, but, playoff baseball is coming. And we're going to start to see, for the uninitiated that may be paying a little more attention this year, or the new fan, as you move through the month of September, you're going to see teams that are posturing in different ways. You mentioned the Yankees. If they get pressed in the division, they might be overexerting their relievers and stretching some of their pitchers and really trying to win those games to hold on to that division crown. That could affect them in the playoffs. But then you're going to see other teams like maybe the Dodgers, who have a pretty comfortable lead, the Astros, who also are probably going to be pretty comfortable down the stretch. You're going to see those teams posturing to get their number one starter ready for that first game of the series.
The Astros,
no, fuck the Astros. It's the reality, though. But fuck them. I agree. But they're going to be posturing, right? They're going to want Verlander going in game one. And the Dodgers, when Gonsolin comes off IL, they're going to want him going game one. Scherzer, DeGrom, those guys, they're going to be posturing for those things as we come down the stretch.
So real quick, you mentioned Verlander. So let's talk real quick on the Verlander news that came out this week. What do you think of him opting out and possibly getting a new deal at the age of what, 41?
41. I like it for him. I mean, you got to be able to market yourself. He's a guy that I think took a little bit of a discount with the Astros to begin with, and his deal is coming to a point where he's got that power to make his own call, and he's probably going to win the Cy Young this year. So certainly his marketability is going to be as high as it, maybe ever has been at a single point in his career, with the exception of, when he was young and signed his first major mega deal. He's at a point now, whatever Kate Upton's doing, keep doing it, girl. Because whatever she's got going on is the fountain of youth. Because this dude's had 2 Tommy John surgeries and has come back, and he's a monster. And probably he's pitching probably the best he's ever pitched in terms of, the mental side of the game with pitching. but he still can ratchet it up there into the upper 90s and then break off a curveball on you in a big old Uncle Charlie that'll buckle your knees. So I love the move. From me looking at it from a player's perspective, I love it. I love watching Justin Verlander pitch. Fuck the Astros, but I love watching him on the mound.
Yeah, so just to touch base here, Cubs had an opportunity to get him before he signed with the Astros, and they missed out on it.
Yep.
And I would love to have seen him and Upton in a Cubby uniform.
Yeah, Kate looks good in the Cubby blue, probably.
Yes. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Speaking of Cardinals and playoff baseball, they're tied with the Reds right now.
Yeah, right now.
For a team like the Cardinals to be losing or lose, if they haven't lost, they're not losing right now, but you can't lose these ball games.
No.
You can't lose these ball games. And I know baseball is one of those things where one of those sports where there's so many games played. There's 162 games played. I get it. Okay, you're going to lose some of those games to some of these shitty teams. Okay, I get it. It's not like NFL or basketball where, you should beat those shitty teams day in and day out. But when you're playing the Reds or the Pirates,
those are the ones you got to get.
Those are the ones you got to get.
Yeah, especially down the stretch here.
I agree. And
it's tough because it's hard to beat too.
I mentioned the Pirates, and lo and behold, a thing just came up on the ticker. The Pittsburgh Pirates have lost 15 of their last 17 games. So come on, bro. He needs to sell his team too.
That's a rough stretch.
He needs to sell his team too.
Yeah, that's tough. They've got a lot of talent in the pipeline, but it's another situation. Like, are they ever going to get to a point where they do what maybe the Orioles did and they keep the talent up in the major leagues? I like what they did with O'Neal Cruz this year. I like that they brought him up, kept him up. If that's a sign of things to come in Pittsburgh, then maybe there's some redemption there. But yeah, it's tough to watch that play out as it has over the last, because think of what they had on that team back when they had Kutch. What happened? The Reds win? Walk it off?
Oh, no. Warning track.
Oh, no.
No.
Oh, man. But
what
the Pirates had back, they had Kutch and they had Garrett Cole, and they had a lot of really good role players on that team, and Bell, and they had a really good roster, and they just let all those guys walk out the building. And it's those things that frustrate you as a baseball fan, to see a team like that should be able to pay a couple of them guys and still stay within a reasonable operating, budget.
Yeah.
And they just let them walk out the door. So I'm with you. I get it. I like what they did with keeping Cruz up, but of course, in 4 years when he's ready for, an extension or a new contract, are they going to be willing to pay him? I guess that's when we'll find out if the Pirates are serious or not.
Yeah. I think Pat McAfee might have had some influence on that decision for the Pirates there.
He shits on him all the time.
All the time. I love it.
Oh my God. We gotta win some fucking games over there.
I love it.
Oh, he does shit on the Pirates a lot.
Yeah. Yep. Hey.
But all right. Well, let's we'll bring the episode to a close. Appreciate everybody being out here, tuning in. John, Evans, Dad, thank you guys for the comments. Thank you for the engagement. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. This has been another episode of the Rosinbaggers podcast, brought to you by Backyard Sports. For Big Stove, for Ty, who couldn't make it this week, we should see him next week. I'm Gary. We are out.